Cool.
Professor, can I share my presentation, the screen?
Yes, you should be able to share.
It says it's unactivated.
Okay. Just a second. Julian, can you help make sure that she can share details?
Yes, Hibin, I made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen now.
There we go. Great. Julian, have you been able to start the cloud recording for this class?
One moment. No. It is recording as
it is recording? Okay, great. While Heaven So gets ready, I'll go ahead and introduce the details to the class. Good morning, class, East Asian International Management. We are back. This is wrapping up week 3, getting into week 4. I want to make sure students are aware of the class requirements. Again, we all have to do a very big research project and get many Scopus journal articles to reference, and it's wisest if you try to find one Scopus journal article each week and then share that in class. It's extra wise if you find an article related to the weekly topic in your research paper, and so you can share that. Next, there is the weekly presentation, and today we have a student that's going to be helping manage the weekly topic. So she gets 10 points for that, and she's going to be teaching us details about cultural differences. And then at the end of today, we will all have a small quiz from her that I've checked, and it's hard. So get ready for the quiz. Regardless, I'm going to be helping make sure everybody does well today. So with that in mind, please give a warm welcome to our new professor, Evan Song.
Professor, so my teammate Ho-Jin is here, so he's gonna start the presentation.
Wow, okay, great. Talk about a fighter. I'm glad you're doing okay. I heard that you had a little bit of an issue earlier.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually fine now. So, may I start the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So, Kevin and I are gonna present about East Asian management culture differences. And next page. And this is our table of contents. Next page. So, starting from the culture. A culture consists of value, belief, and attitude of group. So therefore, to understand the different management style of the region, it is necessary to understand the culture. Max Weber classified mainly 2 different cultures by Western and Eastern, which are the Protestantism and Confucianism. He believes that religious belief is embedded in the culture and connected to the society. Protestantism is theocentric, which is the only God and me exist. Individualistic culture and no hierarchical structure exists. On the other hand, Confucianism is cosmocentric that puts priority of the relationship with people. So the West and East have developed into different characteristics with different cultures. Next page. So we will look at the deeper part of the Confucianism. South Korea, China, and Japan are representative countries in the East Asian Confucian culture area. Historically, Confucianism, which began from the China in the 7th and 8th centuries, served as a counterpiece of the cultural commonality of the three kingdoms of Korea, China, and Japan. Confucianism has played a significant role in the development of the three kingdoms as it has established in different ways in East Asia. Next page. Confucianism is considered thoroughly community society rather than individual. Confucianism put more priority on the relationship between people to people. It is more important to know what kind of relationship an individual has than an individual itself. Confucianism is sometimes regarded as a hierarchical authoritarianism that suppresses individual. In this reason, Confucianism considered as a governance theory, that is, the ultimate goal is to realize the national governance. In this view, government is necessary in the Confucian region. However, there are some negative However, there are some negative views exist. The West took the Confucian backwardness of East Asia for granted. Max Weber, a socialist, found the reason why China had limitation on the capitalism is due to the ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is evaluating other cultures based on their values and habits. Also, he believed Confucian values have hampered the development of capitalism in Asia. Moreover, some economists criticize the family-running company culture, which has been affected by the Confucianism. Developed society in Korea and Zaibatsu in Japan. However, culture is just different, and it is not good or bad. Characteristics of Confucianism actually accomplished rapid growth, economic growth of East Asian countries. So we will look at some cases that Confucian characteristics that made East Asian economic growth. Starting with China, the reform and opening policy led by Deng Xiaoping is the driving force that made China as the world's second largest economy after the United States. Next page. Compared to 40 years ago, China's population increased by 430 million and number of poverty has decreased highly, resulting in more than 700 million people are saved from the poverty. GDP recorded 83 trillion yuan in 2017, proving once again that it is second largest economy after the United States. Disposable income per person also increased 152 times compared to the past 40 years. Moreover, food production doubled, industrial value increased 175 times, and service sector increased 474 times, respectively. In addition to improving economic standards, the number of employed people has increased 1.9 times to 776 million.
Excuse me, could you go back and in the last slide, yes, you have four different main images. Could you help make sure it's clear to me and the classmates which one is population, which one is poverty, or just pick one of them and just go through it a little bit more so I can better understand details? Maybe I'm getting confused with the number for population or the number of poverty, for example.
Oh, sorry. The left side upper part is the population.
So 1978, there was 9.6 million, so 960 million, and then it went up to 1.3 billion. Okay, that makes sense. So the population is growing, yes.
And that's the number of the poverty.
Okay, so 770 million people were in poverty before, and now only 30 million people in poverty now. Okay, thanks for that.
I think Hojin's sound is not working right now. Professor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
But Hojin says that he cannot deliver his voice by the computer.
Okay, will you be able to help him out?
Okay.
I can.
Okay.
This is awesome, real life example. When you're working with a company working online around the world, not only will we have different problems with time zones and cultural differences, but we will have difficulty with technology too. For example, Facebook is not very popular in China, and Google has a lot of limitations in China. So when you're working internationally, expect that there's going to be some technical challenges. Go ahead, Miss So.
Oh, sorry, I'm back.
Great to hear you.
Proceeding on to the Korea, some cases of Korean economic growth shows confusion characteristics very well. So starting from the 1950, just right after the Korean War, South Korea's GNI per capita was very low, that the Korea was the third poorest country in the world. However, economy started to boost by state-led actions. So state-led actions. So President Park's 5-year economic development plan was to make an export-led country. So President Park's vocations to exit from poverty has made successful economic development through the aiming international market strategy, and is called as a miracles of Han River. Next page. Also, President Park focused on the export-led heavy chemical industry through the chaebol enterprises, and overcome the economic recession of oil crisis by entering construction company to Middle East. So President Park judged that rather than raising small and medium-sized enterprises, building a large scale of heavy industry would accelerate the economic developments rapidly, and gave financial benefits to chaebol to participate. In result, Korea achieved economic stability. And lastly, Semao movement shows confusion characteristic very well, since it requires community cooperation. Semao movement was to aim develop a farm village by providing ferro concrete freely and do whatever needed, and reduce the gap between rural and urban area. Semao movement actually encouraged agriculture people to cooperate each other and develop themselves in their own. So movement soon spread to the city and developed as a modernization movement to entire Korea, and led an economic development. Next page. So Japan also started to show economic growth by government-led export-driven economic growth policy after the World War II. What is different from Korea is that Japan already had a basis of a sufficient domestic market to start the economic growth policies. Japanese government also provided high level of support to the zaibatsu and keiratsu. Japanese industry gained its competitiveness by copying Western products, improving them, and selling back to the West for the cheaper prices. Next page. In 1985, the United States made dollar depreciated to deal its growing trade deficit, and yen appreciated. The Japanese economy rapidly stagnated due to the decrease in export. To deal economic stagnation, Japanese government implemented flexible fiscal and financial policies, and that made rising the corporate and people to make investment on the public sector and real estate, and that caused huge increase in real estate and stock prices. Even though it was a bubble economy, Japanese economy boom was educative, and we can see Japan strong by historical fact that 53 of the world top companies were Japanese company in 1980. So from now, Kevin will present about cultural differences.
Okay, from now on, I am going to present about the cultural differences. First, we're gonna watch a video from the Erin Meyer, who is the American author of the book, The Culture Map.
I can't hear her. I can't hear the video. You guys are doing a very good job of being able to work online internationally. You could have a teammate in another country and you're still doing well and you're helping each other. That's great. I hope the rest of the class is able to get online and start dealing with international management no matter where you're located. I still can't hear the video yet. Maybe you can share the video link in the chat section and I can try to open it.
Professor, can you hear my voice then?
Yes, I can hear your voice.
Okay, then I'm just gonna send you the link of the video.
Okay. You should be able to share with everyone.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
shared this.
Okay, great, great. Let's see if I can make the. You want to start right from the beginning?
Yeah, and so I have to finish my shared screen, right?
Just a second. Julian, are you able to start that video with the sound for everyone?
Are changing global organizations. But I have not always been working in a cross-cultural space. I was raised in a very monocultural.
So I'm just gonna be off from the shared screen, and then maybe Professor Julian can do it.
Okay. Somebody was able to use it.
Now Professor
Go ahead,
Julian
Julian.
can share the.
Well, I may try to share. I'm not sure if we'll have the sound, but I'll do my best. Okay.
I just heard the sound from somebody. Somebody was playing the sound. I thought it was Julian.
It was from me, yes. So let me share the screen. One moment. Well, okay, can you see my screen? Yes.
Yes.
I have spent the last 16 years studying how cultural differences are changing global organizations. But I have not always been working in a cross-cultural space. I was raised in a very monocultural place. I was raised in Minnesota, in the Midwest of the US. And it was only later as an adult that I started living in other countries and kind of learning about these things. But I had a situation early in my career that got this all started for me, where I was on a trip to Japan with a Japanese colleague, and I gave a short presentation to a group of Japanese participants. And at the end of the presentation, I asked them if they had any questions. When I looked at the group, no one raised their hands, so I went to sit down. My Japanese colleague then said to me, "Erin, I think actually there were some questions. Do you mind if I try?" And I said, "Okay, fine." So he then stood up, and again he said, any questions? And again, no one raised their hand. But this time he looked very carefully at the group. "Oh, do you have a question?" And the woman said, well, thank you, I do. And she asked a fascinating question. And then he did it again. Oh, do you have something you'd like to say? Yes, thank you, I do. So afterwards, I said to him, you know, how did you know that these people had questions? And he said to me, well, it had to do with how bright their eyes were. And I thought, wow, you know, they don't teach us that in Minnesota. So then I said, well, how do you know how bright their eyes are? And he said, well, you know, in Japan, we don't make as much direct eye contact as you do in the West. So when you ask people if they have any questions, most people are not looking at you directly. But a few people in the audience are looking directly at you, and their eyes are bright. And that indicates that they would be comfortable with you calling on them. So the next day I gave another presentation, and again I asked if there were any questions, and again no one raised their hand. But this time I thought, okay, I'll just try. So I did as he'd instructed, and I looked carefully at the group, and I saw, just as he said, that only a couple of people in the room were looking directly at me. And if I really thought about it, well, yes, okay, their eyes were bright. So, you know, I gestured to one of them, and he kind of went like that. And then I said, would you like to say something? And he said, yes, thank you. So this was a very important experience for me because, well, there's an expression in Japanese, which is kuki yomanai. They shorten it to KY, and it means someone who is unable to read the atmosphere, or someone who's unable to read the air, meaning to pick up the communication that's in the air. And here we could see that he clearly could read the air, and I was clearly KY. But I also saw that with a little bit of assistance and direction, that I also could become better at picking up those signals that were in the air. So then as I was thinking about this, I became very interested in trying to figure out if there was a method that we could use to help people to better read the atmosphere when they were working with cultures that they didn't know intimately. And we then started to develop this framework that came from lots and lots of research, where we divided culture up into different types of behaviors. And we started looking at, you know, how is trust built in different parts of the world, and how do we make decisions differently in different parts of the world. And we saw that we were able to come up with patterns for how countries or cultures fell differently on those scales.
Now I can share my screen.
Okay.
So for your information again, she is an American author of the book, The Culture Map. And I guess the video is showing exactly what is different between the East and West culture. And among the cultural differences, the video was exactly talking about the differences between the high context and low context culture. Just like what she mentioned in her instruction, there is a KY, which is an English acronym in Japan, which just means "kuki ga yomenai." That means the air, the environment, you cannot read it. So that means that Japanese people are not using direct or verbal communication, but instead of that, they are putting emphasis on the uses of the less direct and non-verbal communication, like gesture or like looking into your eyes when you have an opinion. And in contrast, there are some of the low context culture like Germany, because I guess a lot of people already know there is one professor in our college too from Germany, and he's always giving an instruction which is really specific and precise compared to the other professors from Korea in the other department. So that shows how the culture has a different context and how the communication is different from the different cultures. Also, there is one more way to see. This was from Professor's video from the previous lectures. So social ritual context. The Western culture has a lot of ritual context. So normative ritual behavior is relatively undeveloped, meaning that what is viewed as a correct social behavior tends to be ambiguous on many occasions. In contrast, the Eastern culture has the high ritual context, which means that we're focusing more on human interaction, followed by a pattern like a tradition or a norm. So sometimes a foreigner might be a little bit confused of this kind of the high ritual context, but once you get to know, like for instance, in Korea or Japan, they might know that we have to use a respectful language to different level of the hierarchical person, or we have to bow when we meet first. Then they might feel a little bit more comfortable with the culture in the high ritual context. And the next one is about adversary system versus the fiduciary community. And literally, this is comparing between like system and community. So in the Western culture, it is more important for like individuals. So their support, their self-interest and competitiveness of individuals more than the community. In contrast, the Western countries, the Eastern culture, which are pursuing the fiduciary community, they emphasizes a commitment to shareable values to a society and a basic trust. So the leadership and intervention of the government is essential. Just like what Ho-Jin mentioned from the starting of the PowerPoint and the video of the Erin Mayer told us that culture is different. There is no wrong or right answer for the culture. And next, we're going to look at the Hofstede Insight more specifically with several qualified journals from the Scopus. So before starting the precise description about it, there are 4 typical dimensions. We have 2 more, but we're just going to focus on the 4. The first one is power distance, and this is the extent to which the less powerful members of organizations and institutions accept and expect that power is distributed unequally. And the second one is individualism, which is the degree to which individuals are supposed to look after themselves or remain integrated into groups, usually around the family. And third, masculinity means that the masculinity side of this dimension represents a preference in society for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material rewards for success. Society at large is more competitive. And for me, it was much more easier to understand that masculinity is same as like how much the culture is conservative. And the final dimension is uncertainty avoidance, which means that the extent to which a cultural programs its members to feel either uncomfortable or comfortable in unstructured situation, the uncertainty. So first, we're going to look at the big picture comparison between East and West. As you can see, the power distance of Denmark and Canada is much more lower than the China and Japan. And the gap between the both East and West culture is getting bigger when we're looking at the individualism and also masculinity and uncertainty avoidance. This is an interesting part, but we're gonna be specific with this by comparison between East countries, East culture countries. This is from the journal, which the journal names Chinese Technical Communicators' Opinion on Cultural Differences Between Chinese and Western User Manuals. And the research on the user manuals, they found out that Chinese manuals have a fuzzier structure than Western manuals. That's because just like what we've mentioned before, based on the historical background of the Confucianism, Chinese and the Eastern culture feels like the most important thing is being politeness. So we don't like to talk in direct way. And so maybe for the Western people, it feels like we're not giving the information directly. But that's basically from a cultural differences. And the second journal was a comparison between the Belgium and China. So this sources from the cultural differences in the content of employees' psychological contract, a qualitative study comparing Belgium and China. So it was really interesting to see this journal because on the left side, as you can see, there were several Belgian interviewees, and they're saying that I decide to work hard at the time and get extra holidays so that I can use my holidays in summertime instead of week. That means they try to keep the balance between their work and their own leisure time, not only focusing on working hard for the company itself. And the next interview, we said that I have the obligation to study and develop myself. So I learn and improve myself on the job all the time. So even they're working in the company, they're trying to learn something for themselves, not only for the company's, like the whole community's interest. And the next interview, he said that my previous company has a lot of communications. We have freedom to call everybody, every branch in the company to collect the information. You have all the calls in your hands, then play it as you wish. So because of the hierarchical system is less vertical in Belgium, so they can communicate freely with whoever they want to talk. But in the right side, there is a Chinese interviewees examples, and they've told us that your final salary of bonus is not based on the content of your job, but on the length of employment and job title. And also, there was one really interesting interviewee said that when I graduated, I was directly assigned to this state-owned enterprise. It was not my choice. It was the state distribution. In that era, the 1980s, when I first entered the factory, I didn't have the right to choose, but could only obey the assignments. And next one, it says, I mainly want to find a job that has been more stable because I'm now older and can no longer go around like a young man, and I also want to start a family. But after I'm married, I must have a good economic and work foundations. So it seems that they're always feeling the responsibility that to make a community or to form their own boundaries of a small, like the smaller community themselves. And also one more person said that because you're a newcomer and you're young, you suddenly have to do more than the older staff. That's based on the vertical hierarchical system. And also, no matter if this job is my responsibility, it is the work contents of the unit. If you do not do it, no one will do it. You cannot let the leader do it. So I have to do it. To be a leader in our unit, in addition to having the ability, you have to look at the leader's permission. So whatever they have to do, they need a permission from the higher hierarchical status. And also, there was one more interview said that the only way to increase their wages is getting a higher job title, not developing their own ability. The next journal was talking about the comparison between Central European and East Asian, and this was helping me that the differences between East and West when we are talking about culture is not based on the geography, like how close the countries are located. So as you can see in the context, the results suggest that the Czech participants showed a significantly lower level of collectivism, that the Chinese or Taiwanese participants and a similar level of individualism. However, the author is saying that there is several specific similarity between the historical background. So the Central European culture and East Asian culture is not, it's not that different. They have several common historical background, and they are sharing a several similarity in their culture. And that means that culture, when you divide the cultural East and West, you cannot just only focus on the geography. And next, we're going to focus on the comparison between East. First, I just found out the journal which is comparing between China and Japan. And as you can see in the left one, about the power distance, China, it says employees' social status is relatively unequal. In Japan, it says clear status level of leadership lead to slower decision making. And for the individualism, China, it says focus on personal relationships, which brings interest. And Japan, it says pay more attention to the interest of team, high corporate loyalty. And for the uncertainty avoidance index, it was the most important thing that I found out from this journal, which says that China, it says employees do most work roughly, ignore details because of flexible working style. And Japan, it says fine management, attention to work detail, decrease the risk of uncertainty. Therefore, Japan is trying to not to face the uncertainty as much as they can, compared to the China, which is more open to those kind of uncertainty. And also, if you see the context of those journal, it seems like China and Japan has a different aspect in their culture. So, and then I found a journal which is comparing between China and South Korea. So this is coming from the research on cultural differences and cross-cultural management of Sino-Korean joint ventures, taking Beijing Hyundai Motor Corporation as a case. So before reading this journal, I've thought that maybe China would be more conservative when it comes to the uncertainty avoidance. But however, it seems like China has much more diverse and much more large business environment. So they are get used to the uncertainty. So they're less afraid of the uncertainty. And however, South Korea try to focus on the details so that they can minimize the uncertainty. And also China, they're more individual. They're focusing more individualism compared to the South Korea, which is more collective. Therefore, South Korea is providing a welfare, or they take care of a lot of welfare for the human resources compared to the China. And the journal was talking about how to combine those different aspects of the culture and make a better strategies for the Beijing Hyundai Motor. And to be specific, we've done interviews from our friends. So there was a typical 2 cases from Denmark and Japan. When you see this graph in the screen, uncertainty avoidance, masculinity, and individualism, power distance is definitely different between Denmark and Japan. I've asked my friend, Christian, from Denmark, and he gave me a really good information about the cultural differences. And what he told me was like, we listen to persons' reasoning and argument rather than dismissing them because of social status. Individuals must be happy for the group to be functioning. So therefore, even for the community, they think that individuals' happiness and individual life is going on a priority than anything. And also, he mentioned about the law of Jante, and in Danish, it is Janteloven. I don't know whether this is a right pronunciation, but law of Jante explained the mindset that a lot of Danish people have. We don't like people that are flashy with their wealth. So people who have a lot of money are not worth more than other people. Or to say it differently, everyone has a worth and their opinion counts as much as the next person. So it means that they don't care about the social structure, social vertical hierarchical structure as much as what we're taking care of in Western country, in Eastern culture. And Ho-jin asked his friend Kana from Japan, and she told us that Japan has a strict hierarchy and therefore the power distance is high. It also influences our language. Furthermore, Japanese people does not want to face high risks or uncertainty. And she gave us those kind of cultural information. The first one is honne and tatemae. So honne is an honest feeling, and tatemae refers to lying not to hurt someone or to make someone feel happy. So Japanese people take care about others' feeling a lot. Therefore, they don't like to. They would like to hide their real feelings rather than to reveal. And also in the language, they're using the respectful structure, which is making your status lower to respect someone. So in our presentation, we've talked about the cultural differences between East and West, and also look specifically what is the differences between the Eastern cultures. So those are our keys for the review. So we would like to hear opinions from the students. You can just tell us your opinion freely. So the number one question is, what is culture and how is it different from West and East?
These are great presentation overall, and thank you for revising the quiz questions. Your initial quiz questions that you showed me before were pretty hard. These are very well thought out. So yes, let's go through the class and hear from our other company colleagues or classmates to make sure they are involved and understand the details. Can I try to do the Belgian thing or the Minnesota thing and see if somebody's going to volunteer? Although I'm not offering vacation days like the Belgians hope for, is there anybody in class that wants to volunteer? I can't see Aaron's video comment about students' eyes being bright. Anybody here see a classmate with bright eyes? I only see Ho-jin Chun and the teaching team and Ibn Sun. Everybody else does not have their videos on. Kim Gunsu, okay. Are you trying to show that you have bright eyes? Would you be able to comment?
Overall, the PPT was so great, and the lectures provided from the teams were so informative. And for the quizzes, I would like to go on with the number 3, the context culture. Is it okay? Yeah, for the high context and low context culture, those are the figures. For example, high context culture is more like very straight when they are expressing their thoughts or the sending their argument, but the I don't know, it's the opposite. The high context culture is more like Japan and Korea. Like before we move on to the talk, we have little chit chat and little conversation to make the environment, the atmosphere more comfortable. But the low context culture is like Germany, that they are very straightforward to their argument and expressions. So I could come up with those examples. And thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for answering that question. You guys did very well. The team that presented, and you got a great interaction from your company colleague, otherwise known as your classmate in class. Thank you for trying to answer, Kim. Are there some other students that would like to try to show your understanding material and get involved in company operation / class interaction? I can't directly give you extra company holidays like the Belgians did or they requested, but I can give you special pay with class points. Everybody that is active talking like Gunsu Kim get special points. Other people just get basic pay. I'm still looking hard to see if there is somebody that has bright eyes in class. I don't see too many other bright eyes. Let's go on. Chuk Song, are you there?
Yes, Professor, I'm here.
Do you have any questions or comments? Would you like to get involved in company operation or class interaction?
Well, about the presentation, I think I don't have some questions or comments, but right now I'm just trying to organize my thoughts to answer the review for the quiz. So right now I'm just thinking about the answers for the quiz.
Okay.
So can I just, then can I just tell my opinion about the quiz questions?
Yes, please.
Yes, so for the first question, what is culture? Well, I think culture is one of the aspects that demonstrates the trends or tendency of the people of a certain nation. And the difference between West and East, well, if I can make it very short, I think it depends on how do I say, people are more individualistic or people are more bonded with each other, like mentioned in the presentation. So for example, in the case of West countries, they are more focused on Protestantism, and for the case of East, they are more related to Confucianism. And for the second question, well, I think it depends on the situation. The Confucianist can hesitate the country's development or not because, well, the country's development requires a lot of things, and those requirements tend to change as time passes. So people may, focus on something else, focus on something new or something that hasn't been very popular for the past, but those things can be, utilized for nowadays. For example, the concept of untact due to the pandemic situation due to the pandemic situation brought a big change in the business industry field. So I think, it depends on the situation. And for the third question, I think, well, the high context and low context culture, for examples, like if I talk to a Western friend, and if he or she tells me, if he or she tells me that visit my home, I will let's have dinner together, then I think that means that he or she really wants to have dinner with me. But in the East countries, those things usually doesn't really mean what they directly talk to me. And for the last two questions, I still have a little idea about what to say for these questions.
Okay. Thank you for going through and identifying what you have a good grasp of and areas that you'd like to develop details further. We have, I am participating in our company discussion, and I've seen 2 other people participating in our company operation. Anybody else? I'm going to go in and start discussing things myself, and that means I can't give more pay or I can't give too many more points to the other classmates unless they start to speak up. So let's go through and start talking about this. First of all, Haben Son and I believe classmates, John Hojin, you did a great job talking about these topics with the cultural differences. I thought your professional presentation not only was aware of the PPT and articles inside our class folders, but you found a lot of significant material on your own, and you shared that. It was Scopus quality, it was world famous quality, and it was interesting and it was up to date. So your video was doing a good job teaching significant content. The concept of everybody, whether it's Hofstede or the person that was presenting, I believe her name was Erin something or other, talking about the bright eyes. Okay, Erin Mayer, yes.
Yeah.
The idea of bright eyes is a nice, polite way to talk about it. And I have seen some students like Kim Gun-soo, he just opened his monitor, his video. Nowadays with coronavirus, everybody is starting to see we have to work online. And while we have work online to interact, we need to see these bright eyes. Many times they're not bright eyes right now. Only Heaven, Sol, Hojin, John, and myself are the only ones that I see with bright eyes. The rest of our company participants and the teaching team, the rest of the company participants are not interacting. So we are learning from this at the same time. With the video, it was a look for these bright eyes, but another way I would like to show even further than we already have. I've been getting students to get involved rather than the traditional Asian way of one teacher giving all information and students trying to remember it without asking questions. I flipped the class around and we had 2 great students present and 2 great students answer some of these questions. But let's get into it even more. The more you interact with details, the more usually you remember and the more you can understand when you're managing other people. So while your video told people to check for bright eyes, today in September 2020 and coronavirus, everybody on time, a lot of people aren't showing their eyes. They're not showing their video. So me as a company executive or a class professor, there needs to be some modification for that, right? Does anybody have any suggestions for further interpreting these details? Because I have taught high context, low context with some of the class material we have shared. I've talked more about Hofstede and his uncertainty avoidance, which is very strong in our class, and it's an issue with the Belgian people or the Minnesota people dealing with people in East Asia. But our class right here today, it's still not being understood by everyone. For example, Do Hyun-hak and So Jung-woo, So Ji-hwan, Pak Hye-rim, I don't even know if they're in class today, let alone in a company. So whereas the Belgian example, one of your Scopus articles said Belgian do things differently than Chinese. And specifically, it identified that if a staff wants a reward, the Belgian people just work hard. And if they work hard, that Belgian will think he can have an extra vacation day. But what do the Chinese do if they want a reward? What I understood that research article as saying is they simply have to just be quiet, work hard, and put in many years of service and follow the hierarchy with their job title. So if they have a low job title and a low level of experience with the company or with the classwork, in China, you will see most company workers or interns or students just being quiet, and that's considered good in China. But it's bad when you're working with the Belgians, or it's bad when you're working with North Americans. It's bad when you're working with any place that has the low uncertainty avoidance and low power distance, and the idea of high context, low context culture. I would like one of you to try to pick up on that and help me explain that. Jiwan-so, are you waving your flag, waving your hat as a sign that you want to have interaction? Do you have bright eyes? Do you want to talk, or do you want me to continue? You're just taking your hat off?
There was miscommunication.
Yes, there is miscommunication everywhere around the world, yes. And so the idea of high context, low context, it's even more valuable than what Hofstede was saying. And many of us might not see how we are working with that. What does it mean, high context? People in Korea, people in Japan, people in China are said to have high context culture issues. What that means is they rely on their context around you. Context means your environment. So you rely on your environment. You rely on what people around you are doing. You rely on what people around you are looking at. So if you can't see the other people, you can't do any work with them. That's why in our class, if you want the points, you need to show your video, you need to show your work, even more importantly, working with Belgians, people in Denmark, people in North America, in these different cultures. You need to show not only your face and your interaction or your bright eyes, but words. High context means you need to use a lot of words to explain what's in your mind, what you're trying to do. Just going like this and bowing ahead is not going to get a lot of results from people in Denmark or people in Belgium or people in North America. You need to be able to show some detail. That's the way our class is set up, but it is going to be incredibly challenging for people in China or Japan or Korea to get used to that. Julian, you had a comment. I saw your hand up. What was your...
Yes, I would challenge our students, especially the group that they present, not necessarily now, but even the next groups. So they are like teachers when they present. So I'm challenging them to think and to watch the Zoom environment from the perspectives of a presenter, and share and think and then share their ideas about how Zoom develops in a culture, and what does it take for a Zoom attendant to be noticed and to get in the front line of attention. Okay, so I'm just assuming that Zoom itself, it has a kind of a culture. Communicating into Zoom becomes like it's a new environment for everybody, and it becomes to build up some rules and okay, you can build advantages, or you can end up with some disadvantages by the way you address it, by the way you behave in this kind of group. So I'm not talking here about our experience that we have now and with the classes, but I'm watching to my kids that have Zoom classes as well, And it's funny that I realized that they end up getting grades not for what they say, but just for being present and noticing themselves. So it's quite funny that with this Zoom environment, uh, uh, everybody feels like a lack of connections with the others. And every sign that you are more present and that you give some attention to the presenter or to the colleagues, it builds up some value in the context. Okay, I'm a little bit, maybe I don't want to confuse you, but I'm just challenging the idea of watching Zoom as a new environment. And let's think all together, how can we become um, better in putting us in a lower, no, in a higher grade in this context.
Okay, thank you for that, those comments. I'd like to go on and ask some more students, since a few people, 2 students, have answered your quiz. Those students obviously get marks for doing it. The rest of the students, I haven't heard from you. You need to, thank you. Ms. So, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Professor, because I guess the quizzes might be a little bit confused how to answer for the students. So I prepared several examples of like to make them to understand easier. Can I just present it?
Sure, you can go ahead and start getting your information ready and share your screen if you want. But while I have a few seconds left, I just want to point out to the students.
Okay.
We know Hofstede. We've spent several days and hours talking about Hofstede. We haven't talked about Paul. Paul is a different professor, a different researcher that was identifying more ways people are different or countries are different. Some people have high context, some people have low context. What it means is you and how you're actually working with our Zoom session, how you work in a company. In the high context areas, especially with uncertainty avoidance, especially with loyalty, you usually just show up and you do whatever somebody says, but you're usually quiet. And while that is respected in Korea and respected in China and Japan, it doesn't even get noticed on the other side of the world that has different cultures. Your high context means you're relying on the environment around you, and you take context, you take information from the environment, and it's part of your answer. So if somebody else answers something that is a question posed to the class, as long as one person shows they understand it, other people here may think, okay, everybody understands it. But that's not the way it works in Belgium and Denmark, in North America. You actually have to individually show those details. And what Edward Hall proposed with high context is language. You need more words to describe things. In Korea, many people say pegopa, and it generally translates to mean hungry, or do you want to go eat, or let's go eat. All of those meanings come from the one word pegopa. But in other countries, Belgium, Denmark, North America, most of Europe, they will not understand that. They will think you're trying to just say a word. Maybe you coughed. Maybe if you say hunger or hungry, they are thinking you're dying and starving, and they might try to give you something. So make sure you understand you must give more words in class. You must give more words if you're working with international people outside of East Asia. You must show more important than words, and more important than your face, you must show your results. And in Zoom with technology, it is hard. So if you have your Zoom session just showing your name without a video, and you try to work with somebody from another business, another country, another culture, or an international company, you will not be recognized. It would be impossible to get bonuses just by showing up with your name. You need to show at least your face moving around, doing something like this, and then interact by sharing a chat. Or that's why we have set up the Facebook group and the class Facebook group is set up. So if you're quiet and you don't want to talk, but you do research, you can put the link or comments in Facebook. And hopefully everybody will be able to benefit. Ms. So and Mr. Jun, you have not only found a great video that teaches the main topic, but you also have shared information from 2 different articles. If you can put those articles in the Facebook group, many other people would get a lot of benefit from those. That would be great. And help other students, other company mates realize that they must show a link. They must show they're trying to manage. The class Facebook group, maybe it's not the same as being in person, but you can chat anytime and your chats are saved forever and it will show when you did chat. So that has a better results internationally. That's why Facebook is so popular internationally. But we're focused on China. Any comments about managing international business online with China and Facebook or Google? Because Facebook is not really popular in China, right? And Google is definitely not very popular in China. So I am pushing people to work with that. Julian, you have a comment?
Yes, from my experience with China, there are, I mean, if you want to make business with them, the ones that are involved in the business, they are going to use Western applications, more or less. So they will be using Skype and they will be using communication apps that are available to the Western or to the rest of the world. But if you are inside China, you will be realizing that they actually use totally different array of applications. So this is one approach. Another one, they have a tendency of trying to get very personal very fast. They try to show yourself that they are friendly. They want to show that they are your friends. Sometimes they are, I mean, usually they are pushing it too much. So sometimes people are chatting that, okay, so after you talk with a Chinese about a business, after 3 words, they will call you, you're my friend. Okay, these are some small aspects. So please carry on.
Okay, I will help carry on. Just checking details. We are almost running out of time. I just wanted to share one last thing.
Okay, maybe before you share that one, I would like to just give 2 words to our students. So, first of all, we appreciate you a lot. We are like a group here, and we start to develop more connection between each other. In what matter the class, please take into account that we are not giving a proper exam, and we are actually building up the grading according with your contributions. So we would like, and we do want to give as much possible high grades. But in order to do this, you need to contribute all the time. So you need to put comments on Facebook every week, and you have to update the Excel file. And moreover, what was all this discussion, and I will make it more direct and straightforward, comment during the class. Show your hand, maybe show your face, show you have interest, okay? It doesn't really matter if you are in a cafe, if you are in your bedroom, or if you are in a kitchen. Just the important is the person, it's your eyes are important. So keep into account, we don't have a proper exam, and with every day that we are together, you are building your grade. So do these small steps so you can raise it up, please.
Julian, can you make me, as the main host, to share my screen again? My laptop?
1 moment.
What I was going to show is the Facebook group. I just wanted to show that there are PPTs there. There are some articles there for this week's material and for next class material. Great. Here we go. So this is what you should be able to see when you go into Facebook groups, SW management. This is the EAM class. And oops, something. It's going, here we go. So you can see here, there is an article that I expect everybody to be able to read for next week when we're going to be talking about the Guangxi. And here is an article that other students have posted in the past. I expect to see our classmates sharing the same type of articles. And this is the PPT that if we have more time in the future, next class, I will be talking about this. As far as the students' details, this is an example of what I think is a great student article. Students in the class were interested in talking about how Hyundai can work internationally. And so this is a respected, reliable Scopus Journal article from Asia Pacific Business Review talking about Hyundai and how they work internationally in Korea, in Canada, and in India. And the students went through and they showed that they're also going to start working on this type of grant related to it. Every student in our class so far has not talked about grants, but you should, because you get points for discussing grants. You don't need to win a grant, but you need to show you know how to work with a grant. And this student has started to show that, and they've identified this is reliable information. It's Scopus or SSCI. It's specifically at this level of respect. It's showing that the article has no stats, so they're summarizing for every other student that looks. It might be easier to understand. And it's talking about Guangxi and Hyundai and working with factories and head office internationally. So this article is what students in the past presented before next week, because next week we will be talking about Guangxi. And the students went on and they showed details about how this expert is talking about methodology. And they say that their student group might be able to survey these people in Hyundai through LinkedIn. And they can get that survey results, put that into their research paper, and they get a higher quality research paper simply by copying what other people did in this research paper. Next, they went through and they identified details that are important to students, how Hyundai worked in one culture, how it didn't work in a different culture, how they learned from problems and they started improving in other areas. It's showing what they find very interesting. It's showing something that they copied and put into their research paper. And it actually shows this student, their father is an executive in Hyundai. And so their father agrees with these type of details. And it's talking about remuneration and pay. And pay in China is very different than pay in Canada, very different than India, very different than in Korea. So this is how human resources can vary. It also talks a lot about some very, very important things. We'll talk about this more next class, but I'm showing you, in general, students should be looking for an article like this. They should share it in our Excel file. They should share it in the Facebook group so other students can benefit from it and develop your research together, not just working alone, because social capital is very, very important. And make sure you overcome what is normal in Korea, and that's high context. You don't use many words in Korea, you use the environment. But if you work with people in Belgium, Denmark, Canada, North America, Europe, those people will not recognize, and maybe if they're ethnocentric, not appreciate how you're trying to do things. So push yourself into the international management style so you can start interacting more to get more results when you're going through well. With that said, I am finished with class. We are finished with class. We've gone beyond time a few minutes. I will stay and keep talking about these details. I will be able to give my evaluation. I've seen some students have shown their face in class, other students hasn't. Jihan, you've raised your hand. Go ahead, you have a question?
Yes, Professor, I have a question regarding the questions at the end of the presentation. For our
Yes.
team, when we do present, so is it okay if the questions are open-ended questions?
This group and every group, they must send me these questions in advance. The teaching team will review details. You can use any type of quiz, any type of questions you want. It doesn't, I hope it's not terribly hard. For example, the first group, they sent me questions that were very detail-oriented related to Quebec in Canada. And I was thinking that the other classmates might not understand that. So the students very kindly made the questions easier. So yes, you can send me open-ended questions or true, false, or multiple choice if you want. How you manage that is up to you. I want to see you try to be a leader, not just a follower, and make some proposals. If I see that other students will have too much difficulty, I will give you some suggestions for change. So thank you. Hopefully you understand the details now. With that said, I have gone through, I've shown you the Facebook group, I've shown you the PPT that I will be talking about next class. I've shown you where you can share your articles. There's an article here. And a big sort of task next week is going to be talking about how to work with other people. And most people in Korea understand how to work with the other people, but not as easily when they're with a different culture. So please read that paper about social capital. I'm gonna, yes, there's a question.
I have to go to the other class, so I cannot present the examples that we prepare. So can you present it in the next class? The beginning of the class is only going to take like 5 minutes to gather up the presentation information.
Sure, yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Thank you, Professor.
And all of you are starting to see that if anybody is quiet, I'm going to keep talking. If you guys wait for an opportunity for you, I'm going to take that opportunity maybe away from you so that there isn't a lot of silence in the video in our Zoom session. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we've used 8 different journals for our presentation, and I've already highlighted for sharing the information with the students. So I'm gonna upload the files in the Facebook group today, but my ID is not working well, so I'm just gonna make a new account on the Facebook and then rejoin to the Facebook group, and then when I get an acceptance, then I'm gonna upload all the things like presentation files and
Great.
Yeah, journals. Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. For anybody that does want extra help, I will continue providing some information and note that you can see in my comments for the people today, I'm going to be giving perfect marks for the students today. Number 1, because they overcame their uncertainty avoidance and they were proactive. They were the first students to go, so I'm extra generous with them. Not only were they proactive, but they were very professional. Even though one person had very good reason not to interact today, they were participating. They were overcoming technical issues. They were very professional, and they showed not only the class content that I share in our folder, but extra stuff. They shared a video, and they shared several different journal articles. And as she just said, she had 7 or 8 journal articles that she referenced for that material. So that's very professional. What I was hoping for is somebody in class to talk more about bright eyes. What I was hoping for is somebody in the research presentation, people that were managing today. Even though I gave you perfect marks, there's always opportunity for improvement. And so I would suggest with you guys to realize when you're teaching this topic, you did a great job teaching the information, but you did it in a Korean way. You did it by doing all of the management, all of the talking, all of the interaction. And you didn't really get other people to interact with you. And it's very hard. So hopefully in future presentations, students will be able to teach the topic, provide great information, but also do it so that you get other classmates involved. Make sure they see how foreigners require the teammates or the company mates, the colleagues or classmates to do some of the talking, to do some of the sharing, to share the management together. Even a CEO in Denmark is considered equal to a student intern. And even though the CEO may have much higher pay and much more experience, they're almost considered to have the same amount of time talking when they're together. It's not just the CEO does 90% of the talking and 10% is for every other employee, and the most junior worker has the less time. So try to talk about this high context, get other people using more words. Thanks. There are comments in here that I will be sharing with the class about how you guys can always improve. No matter if you get perfect marks, there's still ways that we can improve. Thank you to, who is it? I saw Kim Gun-soo and Juk Song for interacting and asking questions. I didn't hear from Easter or Park Hamin or the rest of the students. Some of the students I didn't actually see in the class too much. But when we go forward, please make sure you are being involved so that we can help you develop even more. Thanks, guys. Any more questions before we stop the class?